Thursday.
The Executive Thursday Show.
Executive Thursday Show.
Dimensions of public budgeting decision in Nigeria. And indeed, budget is simply a quantitative plan of action. It is the administration of what comes in to the government and how the government plans to execute projects, whether capital or recurrent expenditure from what was generated as revenue. Of course, in this regard, with the topic dimensions of public budgeting in Nigeria, public budgeting decision in Nigeria is faced with an endemic problems of scarce resources. And of course, this issue of scarce nature of resources gave birth to the idea of budgeting. Of course, most recently, the issue of scarce nature of resources in Nigeria is very upfront. Upfront in the sense that the public budgeting nature of this country is today faced with acute nature of how government generates revenue and how it expends those revenues so generated based on whether requests from various constituencies, based on what government felt it is necessary that should be done to one particular region or the other. So as a matter of fact, the issue of public budgeting is therefore based on some kind of multidimensional analysis of what is to be expended and what is to be generated. Before today, mostly budget is about performance analysis. But today, as I said, there is a deviation from just performance analysis based on which type of budget a government is practicing, ranking from either the performance budgeting, zero-based budgeting, and so on and so forth. In any case, some of these budgeting forms are traditional, and some are based on what is needed at a point in time due to the perception that the scarce nature of resources in Nigeria, for instance, become so acute, especially and most recently with the assumed outgone recession and due to the continuous dwindling revenues in Nigeria. That led us to the new concept of multidimensional analysis of what public budgeting should be in this country. And today, we can categorize the idea of public budgeting in Nigeria to a four-dimensional processes that is 2x2 quadrant. These dimensions are: one, the rationality dimension of public budgeting, the bureaucratic dimension of public budgeting, the political dimension of public budgeting, and finally the legislative dimension of public budgeting. As I said earlier, this has a 2x2 quadratic effect because the rationality and bureaucratic dimension of public budgeting seems to be working towards one direction, while the legislative and political dimension also in one other way seems to be working in the same perspective. Now, what do we mean by the rationality dimension of public budgeting? In governments, for instance, every incoming government, especially in a democratic dispensation, they usually go around electioneering campaign activities, trying to know the people, meet the people, and know their plights, know their problems, know what they are supposed to get when the government comes into being. In this regard, people get to know what are the needs from each and every constituency, from each and every local government, from each and every zone, from each and every state. And on the premise of that, rationality dimension is allocating resources based on rationale. That is based on the information that we have that this place merits to have this, or on the other place merit to have that. So allocation of resources in this regard is not based on any biased mind. It is based on what a community, a society, a local government, a state, a community, a zone needs at a particular period of fiscal year. Of course, as I said, this will now be the most viable system of resource allocation. Allocations are not made just because somebody has somebody or a community has somebody in what place, that he can motivate the wooing of projects of government to those particular area. That is, it is based on rationality. The other one has to do with bureaucratic dimension of public budgeting. And the bureaucratic dimension of public budgeting here is talking about the people at the executive arms of the government. Is it the president himself, the ministers, the governors, the commissioners, the head of parastatals, agencies, departments, and extra-ministerial departments, etc., etc. Now, based on the electioneering campaign activities they've gone around, budgets now are being prepared based on the knowledge the bureaucrats has about certain area or places they've gone around before. Not because anybody is influencing a project or wooing a project to any particular, but based on information that they have that is now being transformed into the allocation of resources. Here, it is just like the rationality dimension. That is why we said in the beginning that it has to do with 2 by 2 quadratic effects. 2 are about the same, while the other 2, political and legislative dimension, is also about the same, but with little difference. In this regard, since bureaucratic dimension is based on the information, knowledge of areas, knowledge of communities, knowledge of constituencies that we have, the allocation is based on that. Now, the political dimension is where people influence projects. This is about the same with legislative dimension. Political dimension here is portraying that allocation of resources in government is based on favoritism. For instance, Mr. President will now say, I hereby approve allocation of the construction of road between Abuja and maybe Abaji because I got 1,000 votes in Abaji where I only got 400 in Gwagwalada. And on the premise of that, allocation of resources is made based on political effects, based on political value, because so place voted me and this place did not vote for me. Likewise, the legislative dimension of public budgeting has to do with who do you have where. Since a proposal of a budget is taken to the legislature by the executive arms of the government, the legislature, since they have the powers as provided by Section 101 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria in terms of the states, that they can manipulate activities as far as they are in the chambers and do what they have to do without anybody querying them. They can, in this regard, do the needed possibility to see that they woo allocation to their various constituencies even without need assessments from those constituencies, just to service the people to get more popularity so that they could get more acceptance by their people during the next election. With this, I want to say that public budgeting today has taken another dimension, and that is the 4 dimensions so enumerated, and it all depends on which a particular government in place wishes to adopt. But basically, these 4 dimensions of public budgeting, you cannot do without any of them.